Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along to this final webinar of the year, which is being hosted by the Jubilee Centre in collaboration with our partners at Sallux. So for those who don't know me, my name is Matthew Ferguson. My day job is as a finance lawyer in London, but I'm one of the trustees of the Jubilee Centre and have been serving here for just over a year now. And we're delighted to have with us this evening Christophe Foltzenlogel, who's going to be presenting very shortly on the topic of Are we in favour of freedom of expression? But just before that, I wanted to pass over briefly to Johannes from Sallux, who's going to say a few words before we get started. Johannes.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Christophe. Thanks, everyone from Jubilee Centre for the cooperation. And thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening. We are Sallux. We're very happy to have this cooperation with Jubilee Centre for this series of webinars, and this is the last one for this year, obviously. Given that it's today, 15th of December, and after this, I think everybody will go into Christmas holiday atmosphere, which is wonderful, and reminds us also of the Christian roots of the European project. And I think when it comes to that, when we think about free speech, these two things go together. And the whole notion of individuality and personal freedom, separate from a state, separate from from any government type of structure that tells you what to think and what to say, that you can have individuality outside any group, which is a typical Christian notion. And I am very happy that Christophe Foltzenlogel is here this evening to speak about that. He's also one of our board members of Sallux, and so I'm very happy that he is willing and able to present this evening because of his extensive experience with the issue. I'm pretty certain we're in safe hands here, and thank you so much for your contribution this evening. And again, thanks everyone for joining us, and I'm happy to give the floor back to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Johannes. So just a few housekeeping points before I open in prayer and pass over to Christophe. Just a reminder to everyone that this session will be recorded. And we'll also be hosting a Q&A at the end. Christophe will speak for around half an hour, after which there'll be time to answer some of your questions. So do please send any questions you may have to the chat of this Zoom session. I will be monitoring this and I will pose these questions to Christophe at the end. Do please send your questions at the chat. So before I pass over to Christophe, just a moment in prayer. Dear Lord, we praise you first and foremost because you are a God who speaks. Through your speech, you created the world. And particularly this Christmas time, we remember that through the word became flesh, you brought salvation. And that we find faith by engaging with your written word, which to this day brings many to you. We recognize, Lord, the importance of speech in what it means to be creatures made in your image of a God who also speaks, and how fundamental it is to our human identity, but also to our proclamation of the gospel. And first and foremost, as Christians, God, we recognize that we are to pray for our leaders, in particular to foster a political environment such that Christians can live out the truth of your gospel, most importantly in proclaiming it without fear of harassment or prejudice. We look across Europe today, Lord, and across the world entire and see so many challenges to freedom of speech, in particular, the freedom of Christians to proclaim your truth about the world. So, Lord, we pray that you will be giving wisdom to Christophe as he shares with us on this vital topic, and that your word and your truths for this world will be illuminating the discussion this evening. So we pray again for Christophe, Lord, as he shares with us. and for the rest of us as we go into the Christmas period and the new year. Pray that you would give us helpful food for thought on this vital subject. Amen. So just a quick introduction of our speaker this evening, Christophe Foltzenlogel. So Christophe has been a legal expert with the European Centre for Law and Justice since 2012. He holds a master's degree in human rights law after having written a memoir on the protection of maternity and family through the European Social Charter, which has since been revised. Christophe is also an advocacy officer who regularly represents the ECLJ at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland, and also at the European Parliament and also at the Council of Europe in Strasbourg, France. So I'm again delighted to pass over to Christophe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to you for this introduction, Matthew. Thank you to Jubilee Centre and Sallux for having me tonight. I'm very glad to speak about freedom of expression. I'll just make a final disclaimer about my opinion. I'll ask a lot of rhetorical questions during this webinar, and I won't believe in everything that I will say. So it's a disclaimer for me and also for my NGO. The views that I will express tonight are mostly for reflection and do not necessarily express my views. So if I were to make an academic presentation on freedom of speech, I'll have to go through the definition of the words. What does exactly mean freedom and what is speech? But I want to come back to common sense and reality. I think we all have a quite correct understanding of what is freedom of speech is to be able to have the capacity to have this ability to express what we think. So regarding speech, of course, it's mostly through speech, but it's also expression in writing, through art. We'll have a case on this. And also even sometimes in actions. And of course, freedom, this capability, this faculty, this possibility. I was more thinking about, instead of, dwelling on the definition of the terms, to think about a couple of misconceptions just to warm up. I just have the window on. I'm not seeing the exact title I had here. I'll just have to exit. Yeah, warm up considerations on freedom. So this is a very common. Thank you. It's gone. Thank you. The engagement. Are we free after we chose? Some philosophers explained or considered that once we have chosen something, we're no longer free because we made a choice. And so I remember a French philosopher writing that when he was in a bookshop, he was free as long as he had not chosen a book to buy, to read. He could spend some time in the alleys and consider each book. And as long as he was still contemplating, he was still free. But at the moment when he would choose one book, he would stop to be free because he would have made the choice. And I think there is a misconception here, or an error, is that the liberty to choose a book has a purpose. Why do we want to buy a book? Is it merely to have it because we like its appearance? It's because we collect them. It's because we want to sell it again. But mostly and generally, when we buy a book in a shop, it's because we want to read it. And this is actually part of the freedom. When we buy a book to read it, the freedom is to buy it, but then to read it too. And to make the choice to buy a book, it's not just to buy it, it's to buy it in view of an end, and the end was to read it. And you are actually exercising your freedom until the moment you finished your book. This is the true understanding of really the freedom of reading, of choosing a book to read it. Of course, if you're buying a book for another reason, that's something else. But when you buy a book to read it, you're making a choice and you're free to read it up until the end. And actually, people who have difficulties to finish a book are not really free to read a book entirely, because they do not maintain their will in the time. They had a will, they wanted to do something, they were free to buy a book to read it, but with time, this will sometimes is eroding, is decreasing, is leaving them, and they start it, but they do not finish it. And this is actually the issue with time and the real understanding of freedom. And so one of the um, um, biggest misconception regarding freedom would be marriage, of course. I'm sure you all have friends who told you that marriage was a prison, that you're passing the rope through your neck when you're getting married, because once you're engaged, you're doomed. You're condemned to spend 10, 20, 30, 50 years with the same person. This isn't freedom. It's prison, because you have only one person to spend the rest of your life with. But actually, no, marriage means commitment. It means an end. It has a purpose. It's not just saying yes to someone on one day. It has a purpose to actually getting married with someone, and in view of having children, in view of supporting each other. And it's a commitment that as Christians you can make forever, because you want God to bound you, and you have to again anchor your will in time. And so you're acting freely when you maintain your commitment through time. And so I think it's just interesting to consider that time is also a factor. The end of what you're committing yourself is key to understanding how I can say that unbreakable marriage is a freedom. Well, it's because you're making a commitment with a purpose, and you want to maintain your will in time, and that's part of the freedom. I also wanted just to touch upon the mathematical conception that many people have on freedom, which is basically the more you can say, the more you are free. So yeah, I read the more the merrier. But basically, when you say something to someone, it can be something neutral or pleasing. So there's no exact scientific data behind the representation. It's just to consider is that you have a wide range of possibilities when you speak, and you can say something indifferent. Usually you would say something pleasing to others, but one can decently argue that being aggressive is sometimes necessary to ask for results, to ask questions, to demand things. And so it would be part of your freedom of expression. I can be pleasing, but I can be aggressive. And to many today, maybe it's saying insults is a freedom too. Be able to swear, be able to say nasty things, and even saying horrific things, things utterly insane. If you have a mathematical conception of freedom, it's like you can add all these possibilities. And I think all of us would have some issues with stating that the more you can do, the better it is, or anybody, I think, is sensing that there's something wrong with being able of saying terrible things precisely because they are terrible. So I'm going to speak about 4 cases that I selected just to narrow it, because I'm already speaking. I've been already speaking for 10 minutes. Cases on which the ECLJ has been involved. So if you want to dig in the cases that I will mention tonight, you can look at it on our website, and we have our written observations on it, and you can continue the reflection. But also because these are cases that are pending, or that were ruled by the European Court of Human Rights, and so it's a court based in Strasbourg. That is a key body of the Council of Europe, a European institution that is older and bigger than the European Union, and of which our friends from the United Kingdom are still members. So these cases concern also the United Kingdom, and that's why I thought these would be interesting cases to talk about. So, of course, I thought COVID would be a good topic to speak about regarding freedom of expression on scientific issues. So, here I have the picture of Professor Perron, who was a French and still alive, but he's a French professor. He was basically in the top 3 scientists regarding pandemics in France. He was responsible for the WHO pandemic treaties. He has a lot of credentials. He was probably one of the most qualified person to speak about pandemic and state response to this in France. But it happened that this person was not very much in favor of vaccines. He was convinced that there were some treatments to COVID, and that actually the French government with European governments were acting too irrationally, too strongly, that it was a real disease that had bad consequences, but that could be dealt with some medication, and there was no need to lock down the country and so on. And so he was attacked, of course, and CNews, which is like the French Fox News, to put it in a nutshell, was only one of the last TV channel to interview him, to invite him on TV to speak about COVID. And during a show one night in 2021, he said that, yeah, the 5th wave was not a real wave. It was not much to be troubled with. That, again, the vaccines were not safe. He criticized the vaccines and said again that there were other ways of treating people. And so what he said, his words were signaled to the French authority, and he was accused of wrong propaganda. And the TV CNews was sentenced to a warning, a sort of administrative warning. And now they are at the ECHR claiming that the freedom of speech of the Professor Perron was breached by this administrative warning. And he was a scientific person expressing his opinion, and there was no reason to sentence the channel for having him. And of course, it's interesting because the administrative authority that sentenced CNews claimed that he was saying something utterly against the general scientific consensus at the moment. And the journalist that was interviewing him should have contradicted him, should have said, no, professor, you're saying this, but it's not what the majority is saying. So the French authority explained that someone on TV should have said immediately after he spoke that he said something wrong. And that wasn't the case. So it's like he needed to be contradicted immediately. Of course, after COVID, we can reflect on and on about what should have been said and so on. But I think that during this period, what we can remember is that no one really defended freedom of expression. There were those convinced by the vaccine who had an enormous contempt for people like him, who were arguing that no, vaccines are safe. We have the data, we have the scientific evidence. That there's no debate. There's no point to give the floor to people opposing vaccines. They are destroying the national policies to get as many people vaccinated as possible to spread the COVID, to stop the spreading of the COVID. So it's insane. And on the other side, so Professor Perron was saying, no, but we can't trust the pharmaceutical industry. The data they are presenting is probably fake. They want to sell vaccines. It's not the way we cure people. We need to treat them. We have cheap ways of curing people. I've got a couple of studies that show that, and you can see that freedom of expression is not an end in itself, but it's a mean that must serve the truth. And with this pandemic, we really had a strong feeling about the danger, and so people who would oppose a life-saving policy would be stupid, you know. There was really this strong feelings among people. I mean, France was really fractured, and I know it was the case in all European countries, between people really convinced that this was the solution, this was the good policy, and people who were just opposing with conspiracy theorists, despicable conspiracy theorists. And on the other side, I think the conspiracy theorists were really believing sincerely and genuinely. I think both sides were sometimes very sincere. So believing that they were naive and to think that vaccines would be the solution. Just to finish on this case, I think it's really interesting to have this like new obligation when you're contradicting the general consensus, that you need to be contradicted immediately on the spot. It's not based on real law currently in France. And so this case is still pending. It's not been ruled by the ECHI. It's going to be ruled in a couple of months. But that's one aspect. Another one interesting. It deals with France. So totally different topic. It's Mohammed Tatait. He's a Muslim and an imam, and he was convicted for hateful preaching. So he was in his mosque in 2017, and I wrote it in his sermon or preaching. He expressed clearly the wish for an imminent destruction of Israel, and he encouraged his parishioners to wish this destruction of Israel, and that it would be the fulfillment of the Hadith. The day will come when the stones and trees will say, "O Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." And so he was convicted by the French jurisdictions for hate speech, because this such statements should be analyzed and considered as being hateful and as pushing people to violence. It was an incitement to act. And so he was sent back to Algeria, I think. I'm not quite sure right now. And so he's appealing to the ECHR, explaining that this was part of his freedom of expression. He's a Muslim. He believes in the Quran, and he quoted the Quran, and that's just the his right. And so again, this is a pending case, so we don't have the final answer of the ECHR. But what the state, the French state, is saying to defend his case is that Mohammed Tatait abused his right. So this is in the European Convention of Human Rights, is that there is the freedom of expression in it. But you cannot use, and this is written in another article, that you cannot use the rights guaranteed by the convention to destroy the convention or to destroy other rights, and because that would be an abuse of rights. So this is the expression, and this is what the French government is saying and explaining. And yeah, of course, speaking is a fundamental right. He has a freedom of speech, but he's telling his followers, his parishioners, to attack Jews. And I mean, we just had a terrific terrorist attack in Australia this yesterday. A father and a son killing Jews during the weekend. I think anybody here is would agree that it's quite problematic if you have people shooting at each other. Does that deny the free will of individuals? Is it because we are told to do something that we will do it? I think not. But if you have preachers with some authority telling people to do something harmful, it is very likely that some, at least, of the followers will do as they were told. So again, this is general consensus that we can't allow everything to be said. And when people start saying you should kill your neighbor, it's problematic. I think the ECHR, it's just my opinion, will confirm the French verdict. Moving to another one. So Asociación de Abogados Cristianos versus Spain. Again, each time you had the number of the case, so you can Google it on HUDOC, the official library of the European Court of Human Rights, and read the entire case should you wish to. This case was interesting because it dealt with blasphemy, so attacking God. This was maybe the main sign of free speech back in the 18th and 19th century, to have the freedom to criticize the religion, to blaspheme. And so here we have an artist who went to several Catholic masses in Pampelune, and he stole the hosts, that is the wafers. You can see one here in the I don't know the English for that one, the ostensoir. So it's a something to show the real presence of Christ. This is what Catholics believe, that Christ is soul, body, and blood is really present in these consecrated hosts. And so he went to Mass, even though he's not Catholic, and he went to communion for over 200 times to stole wafers, consecrated wafers, hosts, these small bread discs. And with these, he placed them on the floor and wrote the word pedophile, took a picture of it, posted it on Twitter, and then had an exhibition with the financially supported by the city of Pampeluna to denounce the pedophilia in the Catholic Church, and so his exhibition was, I mean, his artistic performance was part of his freedom of expression, because he used art to convey a message, and he wrote that with these wafers. And so you have something very annoying in this, is that first he stole things during masses. He made something really cruel regarding Catholics, to steal what they consider to be the body of Christ, to write just a word and to pretend then that it's helping the debate about priest abuses. So the Spanish jurisdictions considered that it was part of his freedom of speech, and the European Court of Human Rights dismissed the case, considered that it was not, or it was it dismissed the case on a technical, for a technical reason. But had the court wanted to deal and considered that it was really an offense and something against an abuse of right, so to speak, it would have accepted and ruled the case. And so we often wonder if, yeah, art excuses everything. Is there a right to criticize the majority? I'll make the bridge with the next case. But we have the feeling that because it does not generate troubles for society, we can let the freedom of expression uh, flourish. But no, it's that he was not convicted because basically the reaction of the Catholics was to pray in the streets in reparation, and they did not try to kill him. Whereas for the next case, which is very famous, we have a speaker. So her name is Elizabeth. She was doing a conference, having a conference, yes, about basic knowledge of Islam. And during that conference, she basically tried to explain that Islam was contrary to European identity. And at some point, it was in front of a small audience. There were 30 people. She was speaking for over an hour, as she explained that, well, the behavior of Muhammad was very questionable. And it's very important because, again, according to her, Muslims, good Muslims, are supposed to imitate Muhammad. He's an example, and the more you follow his path and example, the more you're a pious Muslim. And it happened that Muhammad had several women, and at some point he married a very young one. She was 6 years old at the time. Her name was Aisha, and it is public knowledge, or admitted, or recognized, acknowledged, that he consumed, or he had a sexual intercourse with his wife when she was 9. And even there, Elizabeth, the speaker, made a rhetorical question. She said, "A man of 56 and a 6-year-old girl, how do you call that if not pedophilia?" And so she was prosecuted for this. She received a fine. So she went to the ECHR, and she complained. Excuse me. And the ECHR, very surprisingly, confirmed the decision of the Austrian courts. Because, so I took a couple of the quotes. She was not sincerely trying to inform the public. She was more trying to demonstrate that Muhammad was not a worthy subject of worship. She would make a generalization without factual basis. And most importantly, her remarks were likely to arouse justified indignation of the Muslims, and it constitutes a malicious violation of the spirit of tolerance, which was one of the bases of a democratic society. Um, so there's an entire debate to be made about the unbalanced decision of the ECHR regarding the Christians and the Muslims. I touched upon this in my article, and I just state again, we have the feeling that because it's a minority, it's been oppressed for decades, and so they need more consideration, whereas the Catholics have been the majority in most European countries, and so it's it's equal. It's not equal to attack them. It's more acceptable. This is really developed and expressed by many, I would say, leftist thinkers. But most importantly, what I wanted to show with all these cases is that even the ECHR and all the liberals, all that are, all the people that are so much in favor of freedom of speech, are perfectly aware that there can be abuses. There should be limits. Of course, yeah, I just wanted I could have mentioned so many cases. Of course, we could speak. I thought about speaking of about the vice president's speech in Munich a couple of months ago. There are other cases I wanted to speak about. It's the prohibition of proselytism in Bulgaria. And of course, this Finnish case of and a former politician who was convicted for quoting the Bible on Twitter. But most importantly, what I wanted to show is that even the most liberal thinkers and defenders of freedom of speech understand that it's not an end per se, but it's a means, and you cannot have a full liberal um, paradigma in any country in the world. Each country in the world, each society has to set limits, and again, we the liberal school of thought developed the idea of liberty as a way of progress for mankind and for people, but it is stuck with this reality that at some point this liberty goes against society, is harming society, and you have to impose limits. And it's quite interesting because the former limits that they fought through the freedom of speech are now again often re-implemented uh, by these same people. So if I say it very caricaturely or bluntly, to put it bluntly, uh, most liberals promoted free speech against the Catholic Church, against monarchy, to actually destroy the old Europe and the old way of thinking. And now that we have republics, secular republics, um, they are again imposing limits to defend uh, secular republics against other threats. And it's very interesting to see I would say, the emptiness of freedom of speech, uh, because you say, yeah, freedom of speech for what? They don't have really an answer. And the more they talk about freedom of speech, the more you see them on Twitter calling on ban or to, precisely to quit Twitter, to cancel people, to prevent speakers from intervening in universities, and on and on. And I think that to different true freedom of speech, we can point to this inconsistency that they have. Yeah, here it is for my presentation. Am I still sharing? No, it's okay. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing to your questions.
Thank you very much, Christophe. That was wonderful and very, very informative. I particularly enjoyed how you took us through those 4 court cases. I didn't know about a lot of those, so that was very, very interesting. If you don't mind, I would like to kick off with one of my own questions, Christophe. That was particularly on the case of I think it was Mohammed Attayat. Of the Muslim preacher. And I think what you said there, I wanted to pick up on this idea of free speech or freedom of expression cannot be used to undermine the rights of others or the convention rights of others. In this case, obviously, the right to life for Jewish people. You can't use your free speech to incite death. What a lot of what we're seeing, particularly in the UK and in other countries, in that sort of idea that you can't use speech to undermine others' rights, we particularly are seeing it in the sexuality debate, in the transgender debate, for instance, where to criticize or to hold views, for instance, that men are born men, women are born women. A lot of people will say, well, that's erasing trans people, that you're undermining my rights to live as a trans person. So, in this sort of thinking that you can't use free speech to undermine rights of others, do you think we could get to quite a dangerous situation where those rights are obviously things like right to life, we all understand you can't incite murder, but read more broadly, do you think we could see that argument being used to stifle a lot of speech?
Yeah, I think we're seeing this. From a legal perspective, the solution would appear to be easy to me. It's that there is a clear difference between direct incitement to hatred and contempt or rejection or criticism. So I think there is a fair line that we can draw between calling for the killings of people and criticizing a behavior or stating that it's immoral. And I think there, there's some sort of devilry in this, is that you I'm not saying so. Let's say it bluntly again. We're not saying that gay people should be killed. Uh, we may say that gay behavior or having sexual intercourse between gay intercourse is not moral and should be encouraged. I'm sorry, and that's totally different. And one, how can I say this, is but just this mere moral consideration is considered to be offensive by the uh, proponents of sexual rights, sexual liberation, and so on. And I think a senator, a U.S. senator, had a good reaction once because the TV journalist was asking him, "But do you understand that your words are offensive to these people?" At some point, he just said, "Okay, be offended for that." Sorry, technical intervention. What can I add? It- It's it's also I focused on the legal field and what people are really convicted for and what people are afraid of saying. I think that there's a difference here too, because uh, uh, I think there is a lot of censorship. How do you say? Personal people refrain from making comments because of politically correct, even though politically correct is not necessarily the law of the land. Uh, people, for instance, right now, people do not say Merry Christmas or Happy Christmas. They say Happy Feast or have great celebrations, even though there's no legal obligation or problem. And even if someone is saying, "Oh, it's offensive. I'm not a Christian. You should not wish me a happy Christmas." um, I don't think that this person would win in courts. So you can stay firm and just say no. Happy Christmas. That's what I believe. It's not offensive. You do not believe in Christmas. So that's your opinion, okay? But you can't prosecute me because I just said this.
Mm. No, that's an excellent distinction. How fighting for free speech is not just a battle that gets fought in the courts, but it's also a cultural battle in everyday life. And that even if the laws are good, if you live in an oppressive society culturally, that can be just as stifling. We have one question from the floor, and I see Johannes. I'll take it to the floor first, and then I'll come to Johannes's question. But anyone else on the call, do please give us your questions in the comments, and I will field them to Christophe. So we have one question from the floor, Christophe. Are there lessons we can learn from the historical struggles for freedom of speech and freedom of belief fought by Protestant nonconformists in the Reformation? Quite a niche question there, Christophe.
That's a tough one for me. Mm, hmm. I think, well, there used to be the concept of tolerance, which I think is good to remind because in France especially, but maybe you can tell me in other countries, we have a real misunderstanding about the concept. So the true understanding of tolerance is to accept an evil, because if you do not accept this evil, the results will be even worse. So you accept something that is not great, that is not good, that is bad, that is really bad, because if you try to prevent it or if you fight against, the results will be even worse. So nowadays, and with the Lumière, the French philosophers of the French Revolutionary period, um, promoted this concept of tolerance. Like the more you are tolerant, the more you're a good person, the more you help society to flourish and so on. And they made it like something desirable. So we see it today. You actually don't have a right to oppose something because you have to be tolerant. You have to accept everything. But it's a misunderstanding because at some point some things are intolerable. You can tolerate as long as it's tolerable, but there is a limit, and you don't seek situations that will be bad but tolerable to let them grow and so on. So to me, so when you have so different point of views, there is a certain tolerance that must be applied. But at some point, when when it's intolerable, that there's no option. Like society has to defend itself against a greater threat. So the lesson to me is that we have freedom of speech. Um, we tolerate different opinions, but of course, when someone is threatening the country itself or the life of citizens or other key things, we have to admit that no, there are certain things that are not for the greater good, that are really destroying what we live for, what we are, and there's just it's like something unescapable at some point. You tolerate as much as you can, but no, freedom of speech is not an absolute right. So that would be that's what I really think, is that freedom of speech is not absolute. It's for the greater good. It's for a decent use. But if you use it to destroy what the other represent, or any anything harsh, or I don't know, it's normal that you are prevented from doing it. Um, so okay, tell me again what episode, to what episode the question was referring to.
So the question was referring to nonconformists, Protestant nonconformists during the Reformation.
Yeah, of course. I think with time we can consider that the split and the divisions among the Christians in Europe was not a good thing per se, because Europe in a way lost its unity. But I think that killing the others because they disagree was not the best option too. So there would be a certain tolerance, and then again, freedom of speech has a purpose to try to convince the other of your opinion. Time can help, but the absolute consideration of freedom as the solution, or like an end in itself, would not give a solution to this very problem, and to any other. I think the way where our society is getting torn apart and split illustrates that we have sort of freedom to do anything, and so we end up with everything, and it goes sideways, so to speak. And I think we need to get back to a true understanding of the good end of freedom, and a good understanding of what tolerance is, to keep a society that is at least correctly united as much as it can, not too much.
Very good. Thank you very much, Christophe. Johannes, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, well, I think that Christophe raised many different points, but I would highlight one that I find very intriguing. So in this one case is on the lady who made what Muslims would consider offensive remarks on Muhammad. The legal consideration seems to be the rights of minorities. Now, here's an interesting thing, because looking to the numbers, so Christians actually are a minority. So especially in France, I would say. So the thing is that if you would consider that, right, and you would also consider the principle of equal treatment, then one would say that, well, Christians need equal treatment to Muslims, right? And for some reason, this issue or this point is rarely raised, and I find it intriguing. But what I find most intriguing is this. In that is a kind of subjective grounding of free speech. And what I think is necessary is also how Sallux approaches it in general, is that we need an objective foundation of free speech. We often see this in human dignity. And the way we see that is that you cannot, of course, want to destroy the other, which is obviously against human dignity. And you try to respect the other while be able to disagree, because the moment you are not able to disagree anymore, also that goes against human dignity, because then you are basically oppressed, right? You cannot express yourself anymore. So it is about the balance of respecting the human dignity of the other, and the other respecting your human dignity and your freedom of speech, and so do you in respecting the other's human dignity and his or her freedom of speech. So my point being, wouldn't it be better to highlight that as a more objective foundation of freedom of speech? Because then it is from that perspective, it's fairly obvious that promoting anti-Semitism is evil. But so is inciting of hatred against Muslims as such. So if somebody would shout, burn all the mosques or something, that is equally evil and wrong as anti-Semitism. I mean, that is you don't do that. You don't attack others. So the whole what I find lacking in the reasoning of ECHR is this kind of more objective, deeper understanding of the source and the root and the foundation of human dignity.
Yeah, with that, I agree. Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying about Christians, because indeed nowadays in Europe, Christians are a minority. That is an objective.
Well, that's different from country to country, obviously, but especially in countries like France or the Netherlands and so on.
Yeah, so Western Europe, and there's still this cultural dominance, this cultural thing with like Christmas especially, or some celebrations, the calendar, the some soft memories or legacy, but believers adhering to something biblical and to some tenets are a minority and should be treated a bit like this. And yeah, I think it's fair to point out that the ECHR is really having this Marxist approach of seeing the Muslims are poor migrants. Really, really, this prejudice, to see these.
A lot of Muslims would not even qualify for that anymore.
No.
And
But
that's a good thing.
It's the image. It's they've been oppressed because the white man is the oppressor. You see, there is really this Marxist scheme to analyze the situation. And so, yeah, poor Muslims, they would feel offended by this woman in Austria, even though it's a woman speaking in a conference on a public debate with rhetorical question, with a lot of thinking in a small audience. It's completely part of the democratic life to question Islam, to consider. I mean, her question is intrinsically sincere and smart. I mean, okay, what is this religion? Does it fit with our values? Shouldn't we worry about this? And just the fact of asking the question is already too much. It's already incitement to hatred.
Yeah.
It was fine, and that's where it's, to me, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, the problem for me is that apparently it's all right to offend Christians. It's not all right to offend Muslims. I would say there is no right not to be offended, but there is a duty, moral duty, to not deliberately offend others, but that you can never make a legal duty, which is different. And also I see a big problem arising there when it comes to people who are, do humor on TV. But I see that others are also raising questions, so I'm quitting now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Yes, we have a couple more questions for you, Christophe. One quite impassioned question, which I'm going to take the liberty to paraphrase. I think the topic of Islam has come up, and the question of the compatibility of Islam with freedom of speech. I suppose if I might be, as I'm
I need,
paraphrasing,
sorry for Matthew, but as a matter of due diligence from Sallux, as we are a partner in this, I want to make clear to this anonymous question that no, we will have freedom of religion also for Muslims, and no, we will not go into an area that we deny freedom of religion to Muslims. So I want to make it very clear here, because this is recorded, that Sallux simply does not agree with this notion that you can have no freedom of religion for Muslims at all, as what this person is proposing.
thank you very much, Johannes. I might paraphrase the question for your benefit, Christophe. When we think about freedom of speech, there are undeniable Christian roots in that. I mean, you go back to Scripture and the freedom to speak, and as I prayed at the beginning, of a God who speaks, we see the Christian roots of freedom of speech, and so we see freedom of speech being an important value in Christendom and in Christian countries. And as we perhaps lose our faith, as we become more secular, as new religions come to the West, do you think we can sustain that belief in freedom of speech when our Christian foundations are waning?
Yeah, I think what is key to be a bit more biblical now than I was during the intervention. I think that what transpires from the Bible is that freedom of speech is really identified with the freedom to speak the truth. That it's not in the Bible. I think it's clear that freedom of speech is not a God-given right given to the Israelis or to the Christians to promote a democratic society. It's a mandate from God to speak the truth. And we're warned in the Bible that you have some people who will reject it and people who will accept it. No matter it's not our concern. Basically, it's you. It's like being Saint Paul. You're going straight with your speech, even if it displeases some people. And I think we have to uphold this because we can win, for instance, the debate with the woke, the I would say people who keep questioning everything to such an end that it finishes by being absurd. So when we speak the truth and say yes, there is a difference between a man and a woman, and no, it's not the same. We're so much truth grounded that even though we can be convicted or prosecuted or mostly criticized and mocked and perhaps insulted, on the long term, we're sure to to win the fight because their false assumptions will lose weight. So I think I really have this hope for really basic truths that we can hold firm and keep this. I mean, to defend freedom of speech is to defend really this freedom to speak the truth and to say what is obviously and apparently good and true. And am I wrong? Prove it to me. Okay, this is freedom of speech. If my reasoning is wrong, explain me. I can reconsider. But I'm not saying that what can I say, that abortion is a crime just because I like it or because I want to offend women. No, I'm genuinely convinced that really a fetus is a human being growing in the womb of his mother, and it's not good for her nor for the baby to die. And I defend the freedom of speech against abortion, and the best way to defend this freedom is to show the truth that lies behind it. Of course, I agree with Johannes about what he says about human dignity. But it's true that on this topic, we're on a difficult fight because states are imposing really a normative, um, an imperative belief on people that yes, abortion is a right, abortion is good. In France now, abortion is a constitutional right. It's like the grail, the best that thing that happened to women. And we have mandatory sex education in France now. And during these lectures, it's imperative to teach children that abortion is a great right, that young girls have access to abortion without the knowledge of their parents. They can ask for an abortion pill without questions asked. That's great. And it's okay. No, my freedom of speech is to say that I disagree. I think it's wrong. And considering the demographic tendencies, I think time will credit us and that we will win the debates. But yeah, the best way to me to defend freedom of speech is to really say that we do this because we seek the truth.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Christophe. It looks like we have one final question, which is on the book metaphor you brought up at the beginning of your talk. So I'll read it out. I did not understand the point of Christophe's introduction comparing a book with a spouse. A book is something to which I make no promise. I am free to give the book away or resell it if I do not like it. Spouse is a person to whom I freely make a promise, with whom I enter into a personal relationship, whom I hurt when I break the bond and destroy the relationship. This is our relational understanding of freedom and responsibility for our fellow human beings, rather than just seeing the freedom of the autonomous individual. So, what did Christophe practically want to say with this comparison about freedom?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this question. I apologize if I was not clear. That was the beginning of my speech. So, of course, marriage and buying a book are two totally different things. Absolutely. I agree with what was said. It's just I wanted to point out that intuitively it's nice to believe that okay, I lose my freedom once I have made a choice, and I just wanted to bring the idea that commitment is also part of the freedom and is also part of what you're choosing, and it's not a distinct thing, and that behind freedom there is a mean, there is an end, there is a purpose. So you do not marry just to marry. Um, there is something behind, something lasting, and it's not something that you see right away. So this philosophical theory that as soon as you commit yourself to something, you're losing your freedom is attractive at first sight, I think. At least I was attracted by the idea. Yes, once you're committed, you lost your freedom. And but these two examples, that's just why I placed them together, were really striking to me. That's why I placed them again here, because I think yeah, if you're free to read a book, it's really you're free to do it entirely. And I see people who lack this commitment and who never finish a book because they have their will, but it's not there continually. So I just finish with this part of the Bible where Jesus says that the seeds, there are some seeds that are that fall on rocks in the good mud, and so it's like this freedom. Some people they have some good intentions, but they lack the commitment. And so, yeah, buying a book to read it is a freedom, and you exercise this freedom up until the end. You have to keep your commitment and your will engaged to that end. And totally different example, it's the same for marriage. If you are in a lasting relationship with a strong commitment, you are not in prison. You are actually exercising your freedom, and I wish you exercise it as long as you may, as you can.
Thank you very much, Christoph. I had said that was the last question, but we've had one more, and I think it's good. So if you don't mind, this will be our final question. So the question goes, what criteria should be used to limit pornography? Free speech extends to images, literature, art, and so on. Finding cogent criteria in a secular society is difficult. So yes, pornography and free speech. What are your thoughts, Christoph?
Um, yeah, tough one. Um, to me personally, it's the good of the child that is paramount. So, um, of course, it's totally wrong because you cannot expect a child to do such things willingly. So it means that those who produced the images, the videos, committed a crime, and it's not good. So we're doing some works at the CLJ actually. It's not me, it's my one of my colleague, on the bad effects on people to consume pornography, pornography and pedo pedopornography. So there are some secular arguments. Sorry, there are some secular arguments against such practices. That is, it's actually there are some studies that show that it's not good for your brain. It creates a dependency. It's tied with human trafficking. You're helping and promoting a system and websites that are tied with mafia and so on. So it's true that in a secular environment, it's more difficult to find strong and compelling arguments to fight against such practices. But I think we should not be afraid of bringing the moral argument and to emphasize it, that it's despicable because I mean it's just wrong on the entire level because of what sexuality is for, and it's a perversion to enjoy such images, and the even the secular thinkers or politicians have their moral system. It's different, but they have some moral values and some sort of considerations. And so I think we as Christians, we can boldly and proudly state again that no, pedopornography is intrinsically wrong. It's wrong from the beginning to the end. And regarding I don't know if that was the question, regarding the material tools. I think there are several ways of properly fight against such pictures, such videos. And of course, we'll never abolish or successfully get rid of all this content, but just to make it hardly reachable would be already a great success. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Christophe. That was our final question. And just before we wrap up and thank Christophe for his time, I just want to end the evening in prayer. So let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the wisdom that was shared by Christophe tonight. And in particular, what sticks in our minds, Lord, is that Christians should have the courage not only to proclaim the truth, but to advocate for a society where Christians and even non-Christians can speak their minds freely and can speak their conscience and moreover to proclaim truth. So we particularly pray for our leaders at this time, Lord, especially those Christians in power, to grant them your wisdom as they make these difficult decisions over freedom of speech and where any limits may lie. But we continue to pray, Lord, in a Europe that is turning more hostile to you, in a Europe where Christians are increasingly a minority, that we will be granted the freedom to speak your truth, Lord, particularly in these contentious topics. We thank you again, Lord, for the wisdom that was imparted this evening. We pray that it would encourage all of us to think seriously about this topic. Amen. So once again, thank you all for attending on behalf of the Jubilee Centre and on behalf of Sallux. Perhaps Johannes would like to say a few words, but before that, I just want to thank everyone on behalf of the Jubilee Centre, and particularly Christophe, for his wonderful wisdom this evening. Johannes?
Yeah, all the same. And thank you. Thanks, Christophe, for your work this evening. Thank you very much. Also, thanks to Matthew, and also thanks to Christian and Ruben for doing the practical work behind the scenes and all the technical support. Thank you very much, both of you. I would say that we will share something with all the participants after this on this particular issue, because there's something that Sallux wrote on this before, and it's perhaps helpful for everyone to get that. I also want to simply say that encourage people to go to our website of sallux.eu and to check what we're doing, support what we're doing, look to our bookstore, look at our free downloads, and see what's there for you. I would think that, when people look for an objective criterion to say, oh, look, this is actually evil, I would say simply this, that, if you apply human dignity in a consistent and a relational way as well, then you will easily see, where the red lines are, and where you really have to stop to avoid harming other people. So again, thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, everyone, and Merry Christmas.